My name is Steve Broadwell, and I'm one of the senior security engineers at Symantec. And I'm here today to talk to you guys around security for the cloud generation. So that's not good. So I've got a bit of a fuzzy agenda there. And my agenda today is going to be mainly around threat protection. So I think a lot of today you've been talking information protection, but this is going to be focused on threat protection. And I've got a number of slides to try and keep me on track, stop me going off on tangents, things like that. And if there's any questions, feel free. You can either leave them at the end, come and grab me, or ask during. It's not a problem. So just to set the scene a bit, as we're all probably aware, the physical world is starting to be overtaken by the digital world. I think if you look at it now, all this information that's becoming digitized, by the year 2020, there's supposed to be 40 zettabytes of information there, electronic. And it's just getting more and more and more. And we all want access to this now. And with the Internet of Everything embedded into our everyday lives, it's just getting worse. And we want access. We really need this access. But we are aware of security. We are aware of privacy. But what's actually driving us there? What's driving the security, the key market trends? And the first one is, of course, the endpoint. A few years ago, people were saying, the endpoint, you don't need security on there. It's all about the perimeter. Well, they soon changed that around. Now, with the resurgence of the endpoint, the adoption of the mobile, the IoT, there's actually more phones now than people, and they all need securing. And with these phones and people working from home, I know I work from home quite often. I work from Starbucks. I work everywhere. I want access to this data now. And although it's not disappearing, the parameter is expanding. And we still need to secure this. And we need to do it well. So I want pretty much frictionless access to my data, but still be secure. I want to be able to access a corporate page, even if it's secure. I want to be able to use two-factor, multi-factor authentication, pushed by biometrics to my phone, so that I can be stepped-up authenticated. Very quick, very easily, seamlessly, and yet frictionless. And this is allowed by the rapid adoption of the cloud. I looked at our classification yesterday, and we are classifying 22,000 web applications. I'm not sure about you, but if you would ask me now, name 10, I'd potentially struggle. Never mind 22,000. And if we're classifying them, it means that they're being used. So if we were to, and it's quite interesting, when we go into customers and we do a shadow risk assessment, it's amazing how many, IT, cloud applications we find in there. People don't even realize what they're using. Doesn't mean that they're deliberately doing shadow IT, shadow data. It could be that they just don't know. There's a process hole there. And although that's SaaS, that's software as a service, what about infrastructure as a service? What about, infrastructure, software, desktop, anything as a service? There's lots of them. And that's public cloud, private cloud, hybrid cloud. It just goes on and on and on. It's just getting more complex and still needs securing. And this leads to the next trend. Services. There's a severe lack of good cyber skills. It costs a lot of money. So people are now asking, well, can I have security as a service, an MSSP? But the question is that really what people want, or do they just want it to be simpler, easier, better orchestration, automation, correlation, simplification? I don't know, can't think of any more cations. Or is it really services they're after? And then the final driver we're seeing is cybersecurity. With all the threats and today, legislations, data going missing, breaches, there's a lot more compliance and regulations. And this is the only time I'll mention GDPR, PCI, HIPAA, things like that. But with these trends come security challenges. And the first one, as we see the adoption and all this sort of thing of the cloud, is SSL. This is the good guy and the bad guy. It's great. SSL, it means that we can keep our information private, secret, we can be confident. that we can actually access the data, and it is what it says it is. But it's also the bad guy because it's creating these encryption blind spots. If you were to go back now to your organizations and actually ask, how much of the data that's coming in and out and around is encrypted? We've got some customers out there, 70, 80%. And if you can't see and inspect 70 or 80% of your traffic, you know, there's some serious questions to be asked there. Because if you can't see it, then, and you can't inspect it, then how do you send it to a data loss prevention? How do you keep the good things in? How do you keep the bad guys out? How do you send it to an IPS or an IDS or a content analysis or a sandbox or even a security analysis, forensics? You can't. You're fighting blind. And as you move to the cloud, and the more customers and companies and devices are going direct to the cloud, then you're losing this visibility. How do you know what devices you've got and which are going where? And with that comes the loss of control as you slowly move to cloud applications and services. And it's a problem. And then there's the unprotected devices. It's a bit harsh saying unprotected, but I couldn't quite fit on not quite as protected as I'd like devices into that box. But because they may have some protection on there, but is it as strong as you want? If you're allowing them to use their mobile to access your corporate email, what security controls are in place there? If they're using their PC at home or their grandma's PC or something like that, what controls are on those PCs? Are they the ones you want? And why do they need to be controlled and secured? Because as technology evolves, so too does the threat landscape. Go back from the days of the PC and the servers, yeah, we had viruses, we had worms, but as things start coming out, the internet, the e-commerce, suddenly we had identity theft, DDoS attacks, and as you see, it goes on and on, up until today, where we're now talking about ransomware. We're talking about espionage. That's now moving to subversion and sabotage. If we just look at the notable targets attacks last year, many of them were sabotage, deliberately going out to disrupt. Others were subversion, you know, the WADA stuff. All very, very interesting. And all this data is from the Symantec ISTR report. So in case many of you aren't aware, Symantec have this massive global intelligence network. It's one of the largest threat data lakes in the world, if not the. And we get information from Norton, Symantec, Bluecoat, all this coming back, and then once a year we produce a report. It's a really easy to digest report saying what happened in the last year. And these are some of the figures, just to set the scene a bit more. They're quite scary, some of these figures, when you actually stop back and think about it. I mean, the top one, 1 million new pieces, this is new pieces of malware every single day. So when, let's say, WannaCry, so that was one. What about the other 999,999 that happened that day? And it only takes one, right, to get through. Security is becoming very, very important. And these attacks aren't easy. They're targeted. They're polymorphic. They're constantly changing. And it's not spray and pray anymore. They're targeting the people. So they're looking for phishing attacks, whaling, social engineering, all of that kind of thing. And we've got figures to prove that this is on the increase. This is not going down. It's not a problem that's going to go away anytime soon. And more people now are aware of ransomware because of some of the high breaches that have happened. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, ransomware is just malware. It can be called whatever it is. I don't care what threat family it is. It still needs to be stopped. I mean, it's more common is ransomware because people know about it, probably because you can put a financial figure against it. I mean, you can get ransomware as a service now. They actually, it is a business. You can see, if you actually follow them, you can see they take holidays. They have weekends off and things like that. It's quite scary. And then the last figure, 7.1 billion identities exposed in the last 8 years. To put that in context, in the UK, there's only 64 million people. There's only, I don't know, is it 300 million or something in the US? So 7.1 billion identities were exposed. Makes you think. So how are they getting to these identities, to this malware? What is it they're going after? What are the main attack surfaces? There's pretty much three. There's the email, there's the endpoint, and there's the network. And at Symantec, we've always done email and endpoint really well. It's our bread and butter. We're well known for that. And then last year, we bought Blue Coat to plug, well, more than plug, the network gap. I mean, Blue Coat, they've been mapping out the web and the dark places for years. And that was a massive tick. So let's go further into these cyber termination points for a little while. And the thing about these is you have to do each one of them well. You can't do one okay, another one semi-okay, and this one really well, because it's not going to work. What you need is this defense in depth, and at each of these layers, do it really well. So let's start with the endpoint. And I've mentioned already, the endpoint is still, for me, one of the most important ones. It's the last line of defense. This is where the bad guys are trying to get to. Because if we're talking a traditional endpoint, talking a server, a desktop, whatever it is, this is where the data is. This is where they want to get. Even if they just want to sit on there and actually listen or use it to traverse the network, pivot. This is where they're trying to get to. And as it's that important, you want the best endpoint you can buy, right? The best security you can possibly get. Well, let's say, use a football analogy. I don't have the best striker, the best midfield, the best defense, and then you all go and put my mum in goals because she's got some football gloves. It wouldn't make sense, right? Unless, of course, she's really good. So, the endpoint. And if your endpoint protection solution cannot do prevention, detection, respond, deceive, assess, and adapt, all from one agent, then what's going on? This shouldn't be 3 agents, 4 agents, 3 management consoles. This should all be a single agent and just functionality of that agent. I mean, just looking at the top one, prevention. And I'm a big fan of prevention. I think a lot of people forget about it. Too many people nowadays that I talk to, customers come and speak to me, and they want to know about detection and response, EDR. It's really important. But the only reason it's becoming that important is because protection's not there. Your protection is falling behind. An example, at home, I love these examples. My house, I haven't got a front door which is a child gate, which every time I come home from work, I step over the child gate, I go into my house, check, is there somebody there? Have they moved something? Have they stolen something? Have they broken something, changed something, modified something? No, I've got a decent front door with a lock, and then when I come home, I just let myself in. Don't get me wrong, I'll still check to see the TV's there. I've got my priorities right, but yeah. So EDR is still important, but prevention is much better than the cure. And how do you do prevention? Well, you need a layered approach. Or if your agent doesn't do every single one of these, and it's very good at, machine learning and maybe behavioral monitoring, great. Won't take it long before that's bypassed, and then they've got the keys to your kingdom. You need to have this full layered approach. You need advanced machine learning, machine exploit mitigation, network IPS, virtual patching, host integrity, all of this coming back to a reputation analysis in the cloud. So every single one of these technologies should be backed up by the Global Intelligence Network. If I'm running an executable, let's say steve.exe, it's not good, it's not bad. Do I let it run, do I not? All of these technologies are like, well, I think it's all right, I'm not sure. Well, let's go back to our Global Intelligence Network. Our trillions of lines of data come from Norton, come from Blue Coat, come from Symantec, to let us know, yeah, that's good. No, that's not. I've seen it on this many devices, they're not very hygienic, it's not only been out a little while, it's not signed, let's not allow it. Again, if you don't have all of this, you're missing a trick. So, moving on. You can't talk about the endpoint without talking about detection and response. It's, again, though, should be part of the single agent approach. It is pretty much hunting. It's looking for those advanced threats, maybe the fileless malware, living off the land, the PowerShell attacks, things like that. These should be very quick to detect and respond on. And once you've detected, you've hunted, you've gone out looking at IOCs, indicators of compromise, evidence of compromise, then let's remediate. Let's delete, let's blacklist, let's whitelist. Let's, as it says there, contain these issues. Let's lock down the applications. Simple. And then deception. I'm a big fan of deception. I really am. Because for me, it's quite simple the way it works, but you've effectively, every single one of your agents now are working for you. They're your little spies. So all you do is you create a very simple policy that says, I want you to be a deceptor and monitor these little files and these registry keys or whatever it is, they become your honeypots. So if you've got 10,000 people in endpoints in your environment, you've now got 10,000 little spies. The minute somebody goes after one of these files or registry keys, it comes back and alerts you. You know if there's somebody in your environment now. But it's not just that. It also can help divert. If I'm an attacker and I'm inside your environment and suddenly I've got all these different things to look at, I don't know where am I going to go next? And I'll be diverted from the actual crown jewels. And then finally, assess and adapt. Being able to model the change. Being able to see what would happen if I did this, if I increased my threat protection to this level, what would happen in my environment? And then with a simple slider, be able to do it. And where would you be? And being able to harden, sandbox, things like that. And where would you be without being able to take a snapshot of your risk? Seeing which are my riskiest endpoints? Where should I target next? Very quick and easy. What about baselining and benchmarking? Maybe I want to baseline and benchmark against myself. How well did I do last month or the month before? Is my security getting better? Being able to take that to the board and say, look, I can prove security is getting better. You can see the changes we're making is making an impact. Look, we're getting less malware. But what if you could then take that and compare it to, now you can't quite see it, my industry. So your peers, and say, well, actually, we're doing better than my peers. You can see. Or my peers got this amount of malware last month. Maybe they're going to do the same attack on us. Or the rest of the world. Powerful stuff. I like this slide, and I can keep it up and talk to it for hours. But what about the other endpoints? We've talked, many of the stuff I mentioned there might have been traditional. Servers, desktops, Macs, Windows, things like that. But what about legacy operating systems? They still need protecting. Legacy applications. Just because the operating system's 2016, you might be running a legacy application. Maybe you need to harden that, because that could be there in. What about other hardware? What about IoT? What about industrial IoT, SCADA systems, ICS? Again, just because there's a perimeter around them, isolation doesn't mean secure. How are you hardening them? What about Linux, Unix, IIX? What about Docker? A lot of people now, and what you'll find is your DevOps are starting to look at containerization. You might not even know that's what they're looking at. So you've got all these containers running on top of VMs, coming up faster, being destroyed faster, but have you got visibility into these containers? Do you know how many containers you're running, what they're running? Are you checking them for compliance? Agentless. I mean, these are coming up very quick, but can be compromised. You can get local breakouts, all kinds of things. If you're not securing them, then it's not going to be long. Talking of moving to the cloud, your endpoints, you're starting to move more and more of your infrastructure to the cloud. How are you securing that? Are you ensuring that you've got full visibility? You've got strict ties into AWS, Azure, so that when they come up elastically, you immediately know there's one up there. What the security posture is. Actually, that one hasn't got a security policy on. That one hasn't got HIPS or HIDS enabled. So you can quickly stop it, mitigate it. And when I say, obviously, protection, security, but compliance is a big one, especially when we talk the likes of PCI and things like that. You need to know what's been changed, when it's been changed, who changed it, constantly, in real time. Whether or not it's Docker, whether or not it's a traditional endpoint, whether or not it's one of the new cloud ones, whatever it is you're using, you need this compliance, it's IDS. And then finally, we've got the biggest one that a lot of people forget, the mobile. I mentioned before, there's now more phones than there are people. So you need to protect it. And this isn't MDM. I mean, the way I try and do this analogy, and I've said it to a few people today already, is in your environment on your desktop, you might have Alteris, SCCM, ZenWorks, Landesk, BigFix, whatever it is you're using. But I bet you've also got endpoint protection on there. So why are you not doing the same with your mobile? Your mobile's still accessing a lot of this data. Yeah, you've got an MDM on there, but why are you not got security on there? Why are you not knowing whether an app has got malware in there? What to do if it has got malware in there? What's the status of the phone? Not just has it been routed, but a lot more information around it as well to see what the DLLs are. Being able to take action, mitigate these risks, the vulnerability, things like that. It's a big, big hole that not many people are thinking about and certainly not addressing. Okay. So that's endpoint. Obviously, I could go deeper and deeper and deeper and go on and on and on. But that's just one of the termination points. A big one is email. We're still seeing so much coming through email. It's one of the biggest target vectors. Right? And our email security.cloud service, which obviously sits in the cloud, today is scanning over 1 billion emails a day. It sees 1/3 of the world's enterprise email. So we're seeing a lot of the bad stuff. And we're protecting many of the biggest, if not all of the biggest companies in the world. And why? Because of these targeted attacks, these phishing attacks, these whaling attacks, these, as it says there, business email compromise, not just spamming and malware and things like that. It's typo squatting. It's pretending to be who you're not, these URLs that are constantly coming through. And again, like the endpoint, if you don't have this layered defense, yeah, you've got a defense in depth, but each of these depths need this layered approach. So as an email comes in, every single one of these protection engines are working on it, looking, tricking, seeing what it can do, what it can find out, static analysis, heuristics, actually exploding it. So actually running the malware, seeing what it would actually do, not just on virtual, but on physical, because quite a lot of this malware is virtual aware. So you have to run it on a physical sandbox as well. And then once you know what it's doing, giving it a verdict, yes, no, and letting it through. Without this, it's getting into your environment. Once it's in your environment, then you've got to hope you've got a decent endpoint protection. And it's not encrypted. Otherwise, you could be in problems. Okay, so the final one is the web gateway. So the proxy. When you click on one of these URLs, you go out, you surf. It could be a watering hole attack. It could just be a malicious drive-by. It could be anything. How do you help protect that? And this is where our acquisition of Blue Coat allowed us to come in and really, really do well in this environment. I mean, the first thing, although you can't quite see the red there, is by using the secure web gateway, you're able to start decrypting this traffic. You're able now to start seeing what's happening. You're no longer blind. And once you can decrypt it, you can now start sending it off. You can start analyzing it, ensuring it goes to a data loss prevention. You can see, basically, OCR or whatever it is you want to do with it. Make sure you're not sending out your crown jewels. Make sure that people are not doing things they shouldn't do. If it's bad and it's malware, you can now send it off to get scanned. You can send all this traffic to a security analytic box, so you can quickly start seeing and playing back what happened. As it says there, extracting it. And also, helping with shadow IT. I mentioned before, 22,000 web applications. Do you really want to block them all? How do you know what they are unless you've got this feed from us to tell you, this one's obviously file, this one could be this one could be music, this could be this. And then you can start making conscious decisions to start blocking based on what we tell you, which are risky, which are not. Very simple. And as it says there, send it to DLP. And this, by the way, is all based on policies. Because I know some people there now are thinking, well, I can't unencrypt every single traffic. What about banking traffic or medical traffic? Well, no, it's just a policy. Then just say, don't encrypt banking websites or these websites. Quick and easy. Because obviously not everything should be unencrypted. And then send it across to be analyzed. Because even at this level, it's a layered defense. Bang, bang, bang. Checking. So when it goes, a piece of malware, you're downloading a file. It might not be malware, but still, if we can't say it's good, we'll send it to the content analysis. We'll do a hash reputation. We'll then use multiple AVs on this as well. That's what you want. We'll use behavioral analysis, static analysis, heuristics. If we're still not sure, actually this file still looks okay, then again, send it to a sandbox, on-prem or in the cloud. I'm a big fan of the cloud sandbox because, for me, cloud services are great because no one can get their hands on them. And they can't be overrun with brute force attacks and things like that. If you can't get your hands on, the cloud sandbox, then you can't reverse engineering it. You don't know what we're doing exactly. Whereas if you can buy it, the chances are you can reverse engineer it. You can throw so much malware at it that people eventually might turn it off because it's slow. Whereas in the cloud, it's great. So how do we take this to the next level? And recently, we've just acquired another company, which we're actively now integrating very, very quick and aggressively in the field of isolation, web isolation. So we've got Fireglass now. And this takes the whole URL protection to the next level. So for example, let's say a phishing attack comes through email, or you get a link and you click on it. The proxy itself says, well, I'm not sure, it's quite new, I don't know if it's good or it's bad, I don't have enough information about it. Let's call it grey. Well then, let's send it to its own isolation chamber. What that means is it will then be run off-box in the isolation chamber, and then just the screens will be sent to the device. No agent, normal HTML browser, that's it, just the screens. So you don't have to worry about any snappings, editing, nothing will be sent to your browser except for the screens. You can't be any more protected than that. And would you do that for all your environment? Maybe you would do it for the grey apps. Maybe your directors or your important, that's it, important, but maybe they do all of their URL browsing through isolation chambers. You don't no longer have to worry about many of these phishing attacks or these bad sites, bad links. Hopefully you're doing link rewriting within email. Your email security is able to follow bad links and give you a verdict. If not, this is definitely the next approach. And I think even Gartner, this is a direct quote from Gartner saying this is where it's going. And ultimately, if everything was isolated, then almost the proxy wouldn't be needed, right? Everything would just go to an isolation chamber. Yeah. And we're seeing as well, this is obviously going to be built into the email so that when phishing attacks, you automatically, if we don't know what it is, you automatically will go to the isolation chamber, document isolation, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so I very quickly spoke about the 3 cyber termination points, the endpoint, the email, the web gateway. But they still look very much like point solutions. Yeah, great, I've got a great endpoint protection. I've got a great security web gateway. I've got a great email service. And yeah, they might all talk about back to a GIN, maybe the Global Intelligence Network, but there's something missing. And this is where our advanced threat protection platform comes in, our SOC workbench. Being able to take events from all 3 of these and correlate. Being able to send malware automatically up to a sandbox to get further information, get visibility. Be able to automatically create incidents. And all of this talking to our Global Intelligence Network. As all these events and these files and things that we start learning about feeds in from the Global Intelligence Network, we can quickly see if you've been targeted. We can use our dynamic adversary feed to see, actually, I can see these indicators of compromise here, and this was done by this target adversary, then, I can see potentially you've been targeted. Quickly create an event, an incident. And these thousands of events will automatically create an incident, and we'll prioritize it. Let's say an email comes in with a piece of malware, and initially it didn't get detected for some reason or other. We'd automatically know that, let's say it went to 50 devices. Those 50 devices, 30 of them have cleaned it up. We'd create an incident with only 20 devices on. And set the priority right. So you are seeing the wood for the trees. You are actually just targeting what you need to do. And what do you need to do? Well, you need to clean it up, right? You either need to A, send it off, look further information on it, remediate it, isolate the device, all with one click. These 10 devices, one click, bang, they've been isolated. Or bang, we've now blacklisted this file across the entire network, one click. Application control, again, just put it into a quarantine, one click. Making your life so much easier. It's automation, orchestration, it's there. Or maybe somebody's told you about a certain internet of, you're reading a magazine and found, actually, if I've got this file or this hash, that means I've been targeted. Very quickly, type it in and go in real time hunting across your entire environment, looking for this registry key, this hash, this file name in real time. Suddenly now, it's becoming very, very powerful and very, very simple. And then send it off to a SIEM as well. Full integration with SIEMs, MSSPs, all of it can tie in, get this information, do further correlation if you need. Totally up to you. It's just about making your life easier and giving you that visibility into advanced threats. There we go. So a lot of what I've spoke about was on-premise, but obviously dipping into the cloud. But what happens when we start moving to the cloud? Especially security in the cloud. We seem to have a bit of a chaos up there, and it seems to be a little bit of a mess. Whether we're talking DLP, encryption, web gateway, DDoS, UBA, forensics, recording, access control, all of this all coming together, but pretty much point products, different ways of doing things. You've got different service level agreements, different support, licensing. Is it a single pane of glass? Is it? And the big one that I like to think about here as well is compromising on security. More and more people are going to the cloud, and they're accepting it. If you were to put exactly the same system on premise, would you accept that level of security? Would you accept some of this? The answer would be no. It's almost like you're taking a step backwards to do this just because of the elasticity and the pricing and things. You have to think, well, hang on a minute. No, I've got to do this correctly. It needs a HIPS. It needs a HIDS. I need to be aware of it no matter how quick it comes in. I need to make sure these devices are secure. And this is where we can help as well, semantic cloud security. So whether or not it's the shadow IT, discovering all of these cloud apps, being able to lock them down, being able to actually interrogate. If this is Office 365, well, am I using it for work or home? Being able to remediate. If I put a file on Box and it shouldn't be there, DLP has a look, says, hang on a minute, that shouldn't be there, be able to unshare it. If I'd uploaded it via someone else's PC, having this cloud-to-cloud integration to the likes of Box, OneDrive, things like that, and be able to remediate. So even if it's after the fact or from a different PC, having these controls all coming back. I mentioned before, IPS, IDS. So you need, again, compliance. Just because it's in the cloud, and if it's using, PII data, you still need to know if it's modified, who's accessed it, things like that. And malware detection, just because it's in the cloud. And again, in the cloud, one of the big ones is Docker containerization. You'll find more and more people as they move into the cloud are going to start looking at containers. And again, you need to make sure that they're protected agentlessly. You don't want to put an agent in a Docker container, but you still want to make sure it's protected, it's compliant. And one of the big features that we like is the fact hybrid, because you might not be fully cloud. An example of this would be a proxy. When I'm on my network at work, bang, I'm going through our proxy. I've got all the proxy security and controls. There, great. But what happens when I pick my laptop up and I go and work from home, or I go and work in Starbucks or Costa or somewhere like that? I want the same controls. I want to be going through the same, well, almost like infrastructure, the same security as what I've got when I'm on-prem. And this is where our hybrid cloud comes in. So it doesn't matter where you are, whether it's in the cloud or on-prem, we've synced the policies, you've got your roaming users, they're still getting the same protection, all with this hybrid. I want to manage my cloud workloads exactly the same as I do my endpoints. Okay, great. We'll do this hybrid approach. Not a problem. And the big thing about this is it's all becoming integrated. Seamless, orchestrated, automated, all with open REST APIs, all coming back to the SOC workbench, all making your life easier. Not just semantic products, also third-party products. You know, whether or not it's a SIEM, MSSP, different things, all coming back thanks to these open REST APIs to a SOC workbench. And although, I won't lie, some of these integrations are not there yet, they're coming very, very quick. Most of them are. They're coming so, so fast. This is not just that. This is pretty much our vision. Whether it's on-premise or in the cloud, you need exactly the same protection. You need the same, I wouldn't say the same console. You want the same look and feel. It may not be the exact same console, but as long as it's in the cloud, same look and feel, that's what's required. Any questions so far? Everyone seems to be quiet. I'm just running around. Okay, well, if there's no questions, in summary, I mean, we can go through a lot more of this. But yeah, so as far as I'm concerned, you need to stay ahead of the threats. We've mentioned many of the threats that were out last year. You know, they're still viable. They're increasing more and more and more. If you don't have a good endpoint, you know, you ask yourself why. Do you have this whole layered defense at each of the different layers? Or do you have multiple agents to actually do pretty much a similar job because you've got a failing in one area? Why is that? Are you using email security? You know, many of you probably are, because everyone sees the benefit in that. But then, if you're securing your email, are you securing your cloud apps? That's a big question, and quite often we'll talk to people and they'll say no. They've heard of the term CASB, Cloud Access Security Broker, but are they using it in anger? Are they using it how they should be? Are they looking to see, actually, this is a SaaS application, it needs to be protected. Not just protected, I need to know what it's doing. I need to be able to send off this information to DLP. It needs to be scanned. Just because it's a cloud app doesn't mean it's secure. You need this visibility. You need to stop the shadow IT, the shadow data, things like that, and process. And again, as I carry on going along these, detection, response, and recovery, I'm a big fan of EDR, but protection, protection, protection. Let's get that right first and do recovery and response. If they can't get in, they can't get a foothold, there's nothing to detect and respond on. Although, obviously, with the advanced today, the polymorphic threats, you might not even know they are there. Hence, why we have the deceptors. So you can now have your little spies everywhere ready to grass on the person that's trying to access the registry or trying to access this certain file. So you can quickly remediate. You can quickly isolate. And everywhere. And one thing I didn't mention today, because obviously time, was this was threat protection. Imagine this all again, but when we're talking information protection. Being able to check to see what information you have, where it is it secure, what's leaving, being able to scan with all the different types of technologies to ensure that the data is classified correctly and should be leaving your environment. And then finally, taking obviously control, as we mentioned with the CASB, but then the integrated cyber platform. Now, all of this coming together to make your life easier, help with the whole skill shortage gap, allow you to find these advanced threats, fully open architecture, all coming together to make life easier. Simplification, orchestration, automation, correlation. I can't think of any more shins, otherwise I'd be using them. Coming together to this integrated cyber defense platform. Is there any questions?
In your earlier slides, you talked about comparing your practice, i.e. how are you compared to other parts of the industry being hacked? How are you getting those figures together? So when we sign a deal with you, are you pulling our data and we sign all up for it? What's the process behind that for you to be able to compare us?
Yeah, so the question was regarding how are we comparing ourselves, well, comparing yourselves to the rest of your industry and things like that. Obviously, this is only data that we've got in our global intelligence network. So it is from other SEP customers, Norden customers, Blue Coat customers, and things like that, when you're sending back the telemetry. So you've agreed to send back the telemetry, but it's all anonymized data. All of this is totally anonymized, so you can't go in there and say, oh, how did I do against company A or B? It is your entire industry. Yeah. And the only way we can actually allow to even look at this is if you give us agreement for yourself and we get your license key, and then we can de-anonymize a little bit of yours to actually see how you compare. So all of this is fully, yeah, we're not breaking anything by doing that. Don't worry. So many people have asked exactly the similar question. So, yeah, if you were the only person in your entire industry that is using semantic, very unlikely, but yeah, you would not, the figures would be a little bit weird. You'd just be you, you'd have nothing to compare yourself to. But so far, many of the companies that I do this with, they've got a lot from it. Especially, I mean, one of the big advantages is being able to take that to the board and say, look, I'm proving I'm doing my job well. It's prove it. Well, look, you can see I'm doing better than the industry average or the world average or something like that. Or I can see the new the new network controls we put in. Suddenly now we're not seeing as much malware come in, or we're not detecting as much. And make of it as you will. Any other questions? Yeah, I know it's a bit hot in here and you just had lunch and either that or, No? No? Oh, that's brilliant. Finishing at 1:15 then. 5 minutes early. I think I'll give you all 5 minutes back. Yep.